There is something different about loving a Sagittarius in 2026. Not softer, not easier, but more intense, more revealing, and far more transformative than most people are prepared for. This is not just another year in love. This is the year when the truth comes out. Because when you fall in love with the Sagittarius, you are not simply entering a relationship. You are stepping into a force of nature, a restless, expanding, truth-seeking soul whose heart refuses to live small. And in 2026, that fire burns brighter than ever. Some people will call it exhilarating, others will call it exhausting, but no one will call it ordinary. There is a reason why people who have loved a Sagittarius rarely forget them. It's not because they were perfect, it's because they awakened something. They push you beyond comfort, they challenge your limits, they refuse to let love become stagnant. And yet, the very same qualities that make loving a Sagittarius unforgettable can also make it unbearable. Their honesty can heal you or cut you deeply. Their freedom can inspire you or leave you feeling abandoned. Their optimism can lift you or make you feel like you're not keeping up. In 2026, these contrasts become sharper. This is the year when Sagittarius refuses half-hearted connections, refuses emotional cages, refuses to shrink themselves for anyone's insecurity. If you are loving a Sagittarius right now, or if you are thinking about it, you need to understand what you are stepping into. Because loving them is not about possession, it's about evolution. They will not stay in a connection that feels small. They will not perform affection just to keep peace. They will not pretend to be satisfied with comfort when their soul is craving expansion. And that is both the best and the worst part. In this video, we are not going to skim the surface. We are going to uncover what truly makes loving a Sagittarius in 2026 so magnetic and so challenging. We will explore why they ignite passion so quickly, why they struggle with stillness, why their truth can feel brutal, and why despite everything, people still choose them again. Because once you understand the psychology of Sagittarius, their fire, their philosophy, their need for freedom, you begin to see that their love is not meant to cage. It is meant to awaken. But here is the real question. Are you ready to grow at the speed they grow? Or will you mistake their expansion for emotional distance? Stay with me. By the end of this journey, you will understand whether loving a Sagittarius in 2026 will elevate you or test you in ways you never expected. And if you've ever felt both deeply alive and slightly overwhelmed by one, you are exactly where you need to be. Let's begin. Main. Part 1, the magnetic beginning. Why loving a Sagittarius feels like destiny in 2026. Let's begin with the part no one denies. The beginning, because loving a Sagittarius never starts quietly. It doesn't creep in politely. It doesn't build slowly in the background. It arrives suddenly, like a door opening to fresh air you didn't realize you were missing. In 2026, this first phase becomes even more powerful. Sagittarius carries a heightened intensity. This year, a deeper need for truth, a sharper intolerance for emotional games, and an almost magnetic pull toward authentic connection. And when they choose you, you feel chosen. Not because they flatter you, not because they overwhelm you with empty promises, but because their attention feels intentional. Sagittarius does not waste energy where they see no potential for growth. So when they lean towards you, when they ask questions that go beyond surface level curiosity, when they look at you as if they're trying to understand your entire philosophy of life, it feels rare. That is the best part. They make you feel alive. They don't just talk about dreams, they activate them in you. They don't just ask what you want, they challenge you to think bigger. And in 2026, that energy is amplified. Sagittarius is less patient with mediocrity this year, less tolerant of emotional stagnation, more driven to align love with purpose. So when they fall with vision. But here is where people misunderstand the beginning. They think the intensity means permanence. It doesn't. The fire of Sagittarius is not about attachment first. It's about expansion. In the early stages, they are exploring you the way they explore life, with curiosity, enthusiasm, and openness. They want to see if your mind excites them, if your values align, if your energy moves. And if it does, you will feel like you are standing in sunlight. They will include you in their world quickly. They will speak about future ideas. They will move with spontaneity. It feels like momentum, and most people mistake momentum for stability. That is where the confusion begins, because Sagittarius does not fall in love to possess. They fall in love to experience growth. In 2026 especially, they are not looking for someone to settle into comfort with. They are looking for someone who can evolve alongside them. That is the hidden truth inside the best part of loving them. Their enthusiasm is real. Their passion is real. Their excitement is real. But it is always connected to forward motion. And if forward motion stops, so does the intensity. This is where many partners panic. They say you changed, but Sagittarius didn't change. They simply continued moving. Life lesson. Loving a Sagittarius teaches you something most relationships never will. Attraction is not the same as alignment. Chemistry can ignite instantly, but compatibility is proven through growth. If you fall in love with the spark, but resist the evolution, the connection will feel unstable. Sagittarius does not test you by creating drama. They test you by growing. And growth reveals who can keep up and who was only attached to the beginning. In 2026, this lesson becomes unavoidable. Sagittarius energy is shedding small thinking, shedding emotional stagnation, shedding anything that blocks expansion. And if you are loving one right now, you must ask yourself, are you inspired by growth, or are you secretly hoping they slow down? Because this year they won't. They are stepping fully into their truth, and truth is never comfortable for those who fear change. Sagittarius is drawn to possibility, but they stay for alignment. If you match their energy, the connection becomes extraordinary. If you resist it, the distance begins. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. Sagittarius does not linger where their spirit feels confined, even in love. And yet this very trait is what makes them unforgettable. They don't love halfway. They don't flirt with boredom. They don't pretend contentment. When they show up fully. And that fullness can awaken parts of you that were dormant for years. But awakening is not always comfortable. Another quiet truth emerges here. When a Sagittarius enters your life, they are not just loving you, they are expanding you. And expansion forces you to confront the limits you didn't know you had. Comment if this resonates with you. Have you ever felt both inspired and slightly overwhelmed by a Sagittarius at the same time? Because what feels like destiny at the beginning is actually an invitation to grow. And growth always tests comfort. Now that we understand why the beginning feels so powerful, we have to confront the paradox that defines loving a Sagittarius in 2026. Because the very freedom that attracts you to them is the same freedom that can make you feel unstable. Let's go deeper. Main part 2, the freedom paradox, the best gift and the greatest test in 2026. Because the very freedom that attracts you to them is the same freedom that can make you feel unstable. This is the paradox of loving a Sagittarius in 2026. At first, their independence is magnetic. They don't cling, they don't control, they don't suffocate you with insecurity. They give you space. And in the beginning, that space feels healthy, mature, refreshing. They respect your individuality. They don't interrogate your every move. They trust you unless given a reason not to. And for many people, this feels like a dream. But here is what most partners don't anticipate. Sagittarius expects the same freedom in return, not as a request, as a non-negotiable. In 2026, this becomes even stronger. Sagittarius energy this year is refusing emotional confinement. They are more aware of their own boundaries, more conscious of their need for personal expansion, more willing to walk away from anything that feels like emotional control, even subtle control. And this is where the tension begins, because freedom is easy to admire until it challenges your security. When Sagittarius decides to travel alone, when they need time to think, when they withdraw not out of anger, but out of internal processing. If you don't understand their nature, you may interpret it as distance, but for them it is oxygen. Sagittarius does not retreat because they love you less. They retreat because they need space to remain themselves. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If a Sagittarius feels that love requires shrinking their world, they will choose their world. Not because they don't care, but because they cannot survive feeling trapped. This is not rebellion. It is identity. Freedom is not a luxury to Sagittarius. It is a fundamental pillar of their emotional stability. In 2026, this pillar is being reinforced. They are shedding guilt around choosing themselves. They are releasing relationships where they feel monitored. They are becoming more transparent about what they will not tolerate. And transparency can feel harsh if you are not prepared for it. Because when they say I need space, they mean it. When they say I won't stay where I feel restricted, they are not threatening. They are informing. This is where loving a Sagittarius becomes both the best and worst experience. They will never imprison you emotionally, but they will never allow you to imprison them either. And if your love language is reassurance through closeness, their independence may feel cold, but it isn't cold. It's clean. They do not want love built on dependency. They want love built on choice. Choice every day. Not obligation. Not fear. Choice. Life lesson. Loving a Sagittarius teaches you that true connection is not possession. It is mutual freedom. If your security depends on controlling someone's movement, thoughts, or timing, loving a Sagittarius will expose that insecurity quickly because they will not adapt to emotional cages. And here is the deeper lesson of 2026. Freedom tests the strength of love. If your bond survives independence, it becomes unbreakable. If it depends on constant reassurance, it will fracture under pressure. Sagittarius does not test you by creating jealousy. They test you by being free. And freedom reveals who loves with trust and who loves with fear. Ask yourself honestly, can you love someone without monitoring them? Can you feel secure without constant validation? Can you stand beside someone who refuses to be contained? Comment if this resonates with you, because many people say they want a free spirit until they realize freedom includes unpredictability. And unpredictability is uncomfortable. Yet here is what makes Sagittarius extraordinary. If they choose you freely, not because they have to, not because you pressured them, not because it's convenient, but because they genuinely want to stand beside you. There is no more powerful love. They stay because they want to, not because they are trapped. And that kind of love is rare. But to receive it, you must release the illusion of control. Now that we've uncovered the freedom paradox, we need to confront something even sharper in 2026. Because if their independence tests your security, their honesty will test your ego. Let's go deeper. Main part 3. Brutal honesty, the truth that heals or cuts in 2026. Now that we've uncovered the freedom paradox, we need to confront something even sharper in 2026. Because if their independence tests your security, their honesty will test your ego. Sagittarius is known for truth, not polished truth, not strategic truth, not truth wrapped in comfort, raw truth. And in 2026, that rawness becomes even more pronounced. Sagittarius is no longer filtering themselves to avoid discomfort. They are less interested in being liked and more committed to being real. At first, this feels refreshing. You always know where you stand. They don't play guessing games. They don't manipulate through silence. They don't hide resentment for months. When something bothers them, they say it directly, clearly, and in the best moments. This honesty builds an incredibly solid foundation. You never have to wonder. You never have to decode hidden meanings. But here is the other side. Truth without emotional cushioning can feel like impact. Sagittarius does not intend to wound, but they value authenticity more than emotional choreography. If they think you are limiting yourself, they will say it. If they think you are overreacting, they will say it. If they believe something is unhealthy, they will confront it. Not to dominate, but because they believe truth liberates. And in 2026, they are especially intolerant of emotional dishonesty in themselves and in others. They will not pretend. They will not flatter your ego to keep peace. They will not sacrifice clarity for comfort. For some partners, this feels empowering. For others, it feels overwhelming. Because loving a Sagittarius means being seen clearly, not idealized, not pedestalized. Seen, and being seen can be uncomfortable if you are not ready to face your own blind spots. This is where relationships either deepen or fracture, because Sagittarius expects maturity in response to honesty. They are not trying to attack you. They are trying to refine the connection. But refinement feels like friction before it feels like growth. And if you respond to their truth with defensiveness, they withdraw. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. They do not enjoy emotional battles. They prefer resolution or distance. Life lesson. Loving a Sagittarius teaches you that honesty is not cruelty. It is courage. But courage without emotional intelligence can feel sharp. In 2026, Sagittarius energy pushes both partners toward radical transparency. If you are willing to grow from feedback instead of resisting it, the bond strengthens. If you take every truth as a personal attack, the connection erodes. The deeper lesson is this: your ego determines whether their honesty becomes a bridge or a blade. Can you separate correction from rejection? Can you hear truth without translating it into abandonment? Sagittarius is not trying to diminish you. They are trying to elevate the relationship to something real. But elevation requires shedding illusions, and not everyone is ready for that. Comment if this resonates with you. Have you ever felt challenged by a Sagittarius's honesty, but later realized they were right? Because here is the paradox: the same honesty that can hurt you is the reason you can trust them completely. There are no hidden agendas, no emotional manipulation, no silent scorekeeping. What you see is what you get. And in a world full of emotional performance that is rare. But the growth does not stop here. Because beyond freedom, beyond honesty, there is something even more unsettling about loving a Sagittarius in 2026. Their refusal to stay still. And that is where the intensity truly begins. Let's go deeper. Main part 4, the restless flame, why they can't stay still in 2026. Because beyond freedom, beyond honesty, there is something even more unsettling about loving a Sagittarius in 2026, their refusal to stay still. Sagittarius is not wired for stagnation. They are wired for movement. Movement of ideas, movement of experience, movement of self. And in 2026, that movement intensifies. This is not a year of emotional settling for them. It is a year of expansion, and expansion is rarely comfortable for the person standing beside them. At first, their momentum feels inspiring. They are always planning something, always learning something, always reaching for something bigger. They don't just want love, they want growth within love. They want conversations that challenge them, experiences that stretch them, a partner who evolves, not one who clings to routine. And this is the best part. Loving a Sagittarius means you will never feel mentally stagnant. They pull you forward. They make you rethink your limits. They push you to confront fears you would rather avoid. But here is the worst part. If you crave predictability above all else, their energy may exhaust you. Because Sagittarius does not romanticize stillness. If the relationship becomes repetitive without evolution, they begin to feel restless. Not because they stopped loving you, but because they stopped growing. And in 2026, they are especially allergic to emotional complacency. They are reassessing everything: career, beliefs, connections, long-term direction. If something feels small, they expand beyond it. If something feels limiting, they outgrow it. And if the relationship stops evolving, they start questioning. This is where many partners misunderstand them. They assume restlessness equals dissatisfaction with the person. Often it equals dissatisfaction with stagnation. Sagittarius does not fear effort. They fear confinement. They do not fear intensity. They fear smallness. And when their inner fire starts pushing them toward the next level of life, they need a partner who moves with them, not someone who tries to anchor them in yesterday's comfort. This doesn't mean they lack loyalty. It means their loyalty is tied to shared growth. If you grow together, they stay passionately invested. If you remain static while they evolve, distance appears, not dramatically, but gradually. And in 2026, that evolution speed increases. They are less willing to pause their progress for emotional reassurance, less willing to sacrifice ambition for relational predictability, less willing to dim their internal fire to keep things calm. Life lesson: loving a Sagittarius teaches you that passion must evolve or it fades. Comfort is beautiful, but comfort without movement becomes decay. The deeper lesson of 2026 is this: growth is not optional in love with Sagittarius. You either evolve together or you drift apart. They will not fight to preserve a version of the relationship that feels outdated. They will push forward, and that forward motion forces you to ask, are you building a future together or trying to freeze a moment in time? Because Sagittarius cannot live in a frozen moment. They live in motion, and motion reveals who is walking beside them and who is standing still. Comment if this resonates with you. Have you ever felt like loving a Sagittarius meant constantly stepping into the unknown? Because here is the truth many people never admit. The reason Sagittarius can feel overwhelming is because they refuse to let love become ordinary. And ordinary feels safe, but safety without expansion suffocates them. Now we have explored their magnetic beginning, their uncompromising freedom, their piercing honesty, and their relentless momentum. But beneath all of that strength, there is something rarely discussed, a fear they almost never confess. And in 2026, that hidden fear quietly influences everything. Let's go deeper. Main part 5, the hidden fear, what Sagittarius rarely admits in 2026. Now we've explored their magnetic beginning, their uncompromising freedom, their piercing honesty, and their relentless momentum. But beneath all that strength, there is something rarely discussed, a fear they almost never confess. Sagittarius appears fearless. They speak boldly. They move decisively. They leave when something feels wrong. From the outside, they seem emotionally invincible. But in 2026, something subtle is happening beneath that confidence. Sagittarius is becoming more aware of what they risk every time they love deeply. Because despite their independence, they love intensely. When Sagittarius commits emotionally, they do not do it halfway. They invest belief. They invest vision. They invest possibility. And that is precisely why they are cautious. Their hidden fear is not commitment itself. It is losing themselves inside commitment. They have experienced what it feels like to shrink for someone, to dim their vision for someone else's comfort, to stay longer than they should have out of hope. And once they recognize that pattern, they vow never to repeat it. In 2026, this vow becomes stronger. Sagittarius is no longer romanticizing sacrifice that costs them their identity. They are choosing alignment over attachment. But here is the contradiction. The more they protect their independence, the more they fear being misunderstood as emotionally unavailable. They do not want to be cold. They do not want to be distant. They simply refuse to disappear inside someone else's expectations. And that internal tension can make them guarded. They will test slowly. They will observe quietly. They will reveal vulnerability in layers, not because they lack depth, but because they know how deeply they can fall once they feel safe. And falling deeply for Sagittarius is terrifying. Because if it breaks big. They don't casually detach. They detach when they feel forced to. And when they detach completely. This is why in 2026, they are more selective, more intentional, more unwilling to gamble their emotional world on uncertainty. And for a partner, this can feel confusing. One moment, they are open and expansive. The next, they seem cautious. But what you are witnessing is not inconsistency. It is self-protection. They are measuring whether you honor their freedom respect their truth, match their growth. Only then do they fully open. Life lesson. Loving a Sagittarius teaches you that strength does not eliminate vulnerability. It hides it. The boldest person in the room may still fear losing themselves in love. And in 2026, Sagittarius is learning a powerful truth. You can love deeply without sacrificing your identity. If you love them, your role is not to contain them. It is to reassure them that expansion does not mean separation. That closeness does not require control. That commitment does not equal confinement. The deeper lesson is this: true intimacy allows two independent souls to grow without merging into limitation. If you can offer that, Sagittarius becomes incredibly loyal. If you demand ownership, they retreat. Ask yourself honestly, are you loving their potential, or are you trying to reshape it? Comment if this resonates with you. Have you ever felt like a Sagittarius pulled away just when things were getting serious? Because often that moment is not rejection. It is a silent evaluation. And now that we've uncovered their hidden fear, we must answer the most important question of all. What does it truly take to love a Sagittarius in 2026 and succeed? Because not everyone can. Let's go deeper. Main part 6, what it truly takes to love a Sagittarius in 2026. So now we arrive at the real question. After the magnetism, after the freedom, after the honesty, after the restlessness, after the hidden fear, what does it actually take to love a Sagittarius in 2026 and not lose yourself in the process? The answer is not intensity. It is not passion. It is not even loyalty. It is emotional maturity. Because loving a Sagittarius is not about holding on tightly. It is about standing firmly. They do not need to be managed. They do not need to be monitored. They do not need to be fixed. They need to be met with confidence, met with independence, met with someone who is growing too. In 2026, Sagittarius is shedding relationships that feel like emotional babysitting. They are done explaining why they need space, done apologizing for ambition, done negotiating their identity. So if you want to love them successfully, you cannot approach them from insecurity. They sense insecurity quickly, not because they judge it, but because insecurity tries to slow them down. And they will not slow down this year. To love a Sagittarius in 2026, you must understand something crucial. They are not searching for comfort. They are searching for expansion with companionship. That means you must be secure enough to let them explore, strong enough to handle truth, flexible enough to grow, and wise enough to know that their independence is not rejection. When you can do that, something extraordinary happens. Sagittarius becomes deeply devoted, not out of obligation, not out of pressure, but out of choice. And a Sagittarius who chooses you freely is one of the most passionate, supportive, and inspiring partners you will ever experience. They will defend you fiercely. They will push you toward your highest potential. They will stand beside you through storms, not because they are trapped, but because they believe in the journey. But if you try to cage them, if you demand constant reassurance, if you interpret every independent action as emotional distance, you will feel unstable, because Sagittarius does not fight for emotional control. They walk away from it, not dramatically, not cruelly, just decisively. And that decisiveness can feel like the worst part of loving them. They don't linger in confusion. They don't beg to be understood. They move forward. That is both their greatest strength and the greatest challenge for anyone who loves them. Life lesson. Loving a Sagittarius teaches you that love is not about ownership. It is about alignment. If you are aligned in growth, truth, and independence, the connection becomes powerful. If you are misaligned in security, pace, or vision, no amount of chemistry will fix it. In 2026, especially, Sagittarius is choosing alignment over attachment. The deeper lesson is this: you cannot keep someone by limiting them. You keep them by inspiring them. Ask yourself, do you want comfort or do you want evolution? Because loving a Sagittarius will never be ordinary. It will stretch you. It will challenge you. It will awaken you. Comment if this resonates with you. Do you believe you are strong enough to love a Sagittarius without trying to change them? Now, We've explored the best. We've explored the worst. But before we close this journey, there is something important to understand. Because loving a Sagittarius in 2026 is not just about them. It is about who you become in the process. Let's bring this together. Final closing. The truth about loving a Sagittarius in 2026. So here we are, after the spark, after the fire, after the freedom, after the friction, after the fear. What is the real truth about loving a Sagittarius in 2026? It is not easy. It is not predictable. It is not always comfortable. But it is transformative, because loving a Sagittarius does something few relationships dare to do. It forces you to grow. You cannot stay small beside them. You cannot hide behind emotional games. You cannot cling to outdated versions of yourself. They challenge you, not through control, but through motion. They don't ask you to become someone else. They simply refuse to become less. And that difference changes everything. In 2026, Sagittarius is stepping fully into authenticity. They are no longer negotiating their need for freedom, no longer softening their truth to avoid discomfort, no longer pretending that stagnation feels safe. If you love them this year, you are loving someone in evolution. And evolution is rarely gentle. But here is what most people never admit. The reason loving a Sagittarius feels overwhelming is because they mirror your own limitations back to you. If you fear growth, they feel unstable. If you fear truth, they feel harsh. If you fear independence, they feel distant. But if you crave expansion, if you respect honesty, if you value love built on choice instead of obligation, they feel extraordinary. Sagittarius does not want to own you. They want to journey with you. They do not want to cage your spirit. They want to see it rise. And if you can stand beside that kind of energy without shrinking, the connection becomes powerful beyond measure. But if you try to contain it, you will experience the worst side, not because they are cruel, but because they will not betray themselves to stay. That is the truth. And that truth is not meant to scare you. It is meant to clarify. Because loving a Sagittarius in 2026 is not about asking, how do I keep them? It is about asking, can I grow with them? If the answer is yes, you will experience one of the most passionate, honest, and inspiring loves of your life. If the answer is no, you will still learn something invaluable. You will learn where your comfort ends and where your evolution begins. Final life lesson. The best and worst of loving a Sagittarius in 2026 are not opposites. They are reflections. The same fire that warms you can burn you depending on how close you stand and how prepared you are for its intensity. Love at this level is not about security alone. It is about courage. Courage to grow, courage to be honest, courage to love without ownership. And Sagittarius will always choose courage. The question is, will you comment below if this resonates with you? Have you ever felt transformed, for better or worse, by loving a Sagittarius? And if you're ready to understand this sign on a deeper level than most people ever will, make sure you subscribe, because we're not here for surface astrology. We're here for truth, and the truth is only getting deeper from here.